We've made plenty of videos here on the FM Scout channel about players that you should go out and sign in Football Manager, but what about the ones that you should avoid? Well, today we're continuing our series of players not to sign in FM. You guys have loved the previous episodes, and today we're bringing you another 10 players that you need to steer clear of at all costs. What kind of players are we looking for in this video though? Well, someone that doesn't make our 10 for today but is a very obvious example to use to show you guys what we mean is Mario Balotelli, someone that we know in real life has been a little bit of a nuisance in his football career, but if you were just playing FM, you'd look at him and think that's a very good striker, but hidden under the hood of the game are some attributes that you don't see that make up his personality and how he is as a player. You can only see these with the in-game editor, so we'll use Balotelli as an example. He is someone that, yes, has great attributes, good finishing, whatever it might be, but if you have a look, he has a 20 rating for controversy, so he's going to be extremely hard to deal with. He'll be a nuisance in the dressing room and will likely kick up a fuss. And they're the kind of players we'll be looking at today, not just the nuisances, but players that are injury prone that you might not know about, players that aren't very consistent or hate big matches, the kind of players that you don't realise aren't good until you sign them, play them, and suddenly they turn out to be rubbish. If you do go on to enjoy this video though, make sure you smash the like button for us and subscribe for more, but most importantly, let me know down below which players you would tell everyone not to sign. Who have you had a bad experience with? Let us know in the comments. Maybe we can make a follow-up video about those guys, or if not, you'll at least hopefully put off anyone that reads the comments from signing those players. The other thing I should quickly point out though before we get into our top 10 is I mentioned you can't see a lot of those hidden attributes without the in-game editor, but what you can see when you get a coach report on a player or a scout report is you'll get an idea of if there is an issue with one of these things. So if we take Reece James for example, we can see he's got a positive that says professional individual. That will mean that he has a high level of professionalism hidden in his hidden attributes, but also he's got injury problems, as we all know about Reece James, so it is suggesting in his coach report that he's injury prone. He's also apparently very consistent and good in big matches, so whilst you can't see the exact values of these attributes without the in-game editor, you can at least get an idea of them in the coach report, and if something isn't mentioned, for example if consistency isn't shown as a pro or a con, it just means it's somewhere in the middle and isn't anything to take note of really. But enough of the explanation, let's get into my 10 players that you should avoid, and we're starting with a Spanish right back at Borussia Dortmund by the name of Matteo Moray. Now you might have seen him in a lot of your saves and thought he looks like a good signing because one, he is very cheap, but also Dortmund pretty much all the time, 99% of the time, they'll let him go at the end of his contract and suddenly he'll be available as a free agent. And actually, whilst he isn't going to play for, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, whatever it is, he would be a good level Premier League player for some of the lower downsides, and he does look like a good pickup based purely on the attributes that you're seeing, but of course, there is an issue. There's a reason he's in this video, and for Matteo Moray, it is his injury proneness. The former Barcelona man has struggled for fitness in his career, as you can see, and that is reflected in-game. Now, I'm not going to show you the exact attributes for every single player, but we'll use Moray as our example. I won't spoil any of the others' hidden attributes. I'll just give you an idea of why they're bad, but with Moray, as you can see, an 18 for injury proneness. So whilst you might be able to get good results out of him on the pitch, realistically, he might not be worth signing with that injury proneness. He's probably going to be out for the majority of the season. You might sign him to be your starting right back and suddenly he's not even going to play any games. So again, you might get something good out of him, but I would say steer clear. And that should be noted with all of these players. Whilst I am saying to avoid them and sign someone else if you can, I'm not saying you couldn't possibly get good results out of these guys. I know there'll be someone out there who says, Matteo Moray was great for me, he never got injured. Great, you got lucky basically. What I am saying though is 9 times out of 10 for these players, you better go for someone else because of the reasons I'm going to give for each individual. This one though might be more controversial than some. This is Benat Turrientes, a 21-year-old Spaniard at Real Sociedad, available for about £15 million or so, considered in game as a breakthrough prospect at the major Spanish side. But as you can tell, even here at Chelsea, he's already considered good squad level, and what tends to happen is within a season or so, he is a regular starter for Real Sociedad. He develops his attributes very well, he's got good potential, and at 21, he seems like a very good signing, particularly if you're looking for a nice 6 at the base of your midfield. You might look at him and think you can't go wrong, but there is an issue with Turrientes, and I've checked this in a few different saves because sometimes these hidden attributes can be randomized for younger players, so I don't tend to talk about younger players in this video, but I noticed Turrientes had one of the lowest ratings possible for important matches. In fact, in this save in particular, he has a rating of 2, and I checked in another save and he had the same rating. So unless I've got really unlucky here, it looks to me like Turrientes, for some reason, Sports Interactive think that he is not good in important matches. Now, what that attribute means, the fact that he's only got 2 out of 20, will mean that when it comes to big games, he's very unlikely to play to his full ability. He'll likely be playing levels below that, in which case it's going to hurt you in those big games. Whether it's when you're playing rival clubs or clubs at the top of the league or a Champions League final, he's going to struggle, and you might not want him there to let you down on the day. Now, because of his price, because of his ability, if you are a top club, he's only 21, so maybe you could make him, your rotation number 6 that might play in some of the smaller games, but when the bigger games come, you put, your Rodri in his place or whatever it might be. So he could make a good signing, but I really don't think you want someone like this who's going to let you down in the big moments. I'd rather look for another option, and I suggest you guys all do the same. Now, this one's interesting because it's not often we talk about a goalkeeper in a do not sign video, but this is one that I suggest you avoid. His name is Justin Bijlow. He's a 25-year-old international goalkeeper for the Netherlands, playing at Feyenoord, one of the best clubs in the Eredivisie, and at about £20 million, for many teams that are after a goalkeeper, he looks like he could be a perfect option. You get an international who is not yet in his prime, he's got years left ahead of him, another 10 years really, playing at the top, great attributes all around, the modern day sweeper keeper. Why wouldn't you want him? I mean, he's a consistent performer, he adapts well, and he's good in big matches. What's the issue? Well, you'll see it here. There is an injury proneness, and if you don't know, the way these coach reports work is they don't tell you the exact attribute number for a specific issue, whether it's consistency or injury proneness, but the darker the colour it is, the worse it is. So the fact that he's got a dark green for consistency suggests his consistency is quite high, whereas this is kind of a light green for adaptability, so it'd probably be in that 14-15 range. But as you can tell by the injury proneness, it's not orange, it is a dark red, and Bijlow has a very high injury proneness rating. In fact, he's got one of the highest in the whole of FM24. There's a good chance he's going to be injured for the majority of the time you are running your save, and that is of course a big issue, particularly when it comes to a goalkeeper. Now, this year in FM24 is the first time that keepers tend to actually get injured. It didn't really happen in previous games, but whereas if you got your striker injured or your winger injured, you might have other players that can fill in for you. You might be able to bring your backup right winger over to the left to start, whatever it might be. With goalkeepers, it doesn't tend to be like that for a lot of you guys. You might not even have a very good number 2. I know a lot of people just tend to use an academy goalkeeper or something, but either way, you'll be relying upon a second choice goalkeeper for the majority of your save, and that is not something you want to do. It's such a crucial position. You don't want your number 1 being out. So if you've got £20 million to spend and you're looking for a goalkeeper, I would say ignore Bijlow, go for someone else. There'll be better options out there, and we've made videos on the channel about all the players that you should go out and sign instead, so if you don't know who to buy, go and look at some of them. But we now go from a £20 million goalkeeper to a free agent. This is the kind of player that a lot of you guys, if you're playing, say, as a championship level team, if we use the English divisions as an example, might look to as someone that can get you promoted very easily. I mean, he's 28, he's got a lot of ability, his name is Luke Carty, and whilst he doesn't have the most extraordinary career so far, he's been a pretty big regular in the Norwegian division, and the game clearly seems to rate him. In fact, as free agents go, he's probably one of the best ones out there, particularly with the fact that the clubs he's been at before means he's probably not going to ask for a crazy wage. He's got some decent traits as well, very nice attributes all around, so why wouldn't you pick someone like this up? Well, whilst he has a very high rating for versatility and adaptability, aka he can play a bunch of positions, and also when it comes to a new nation, he'll pick it up pretty quickly, he has a big issue again when it comes to injury proneness. Now, that isn't the only attribute that we're focusing on today, but he is another one in this video that is an injury prone player, someone that you probably don't want to go out and give a contract to, particularly if you are in a lower division trying to get promoted and you have a limited budget to spend most of your wages on a player like this who looks great but isn't going to be around all the time. It's a big issue. And like I say, I do think he is a better player for those lower divisions, and they're the leagues where you have to play many more games, you'll have a tough schedule, sometimes playing 2 times a week in those lower down tiers, and if you've got someone that's running the risk of injury, he's going to have a big chance of missing a lot of games for you, and you'll just be throwing those wages away really. So unless you're signing him on a deal where you're not paying him much in wages, but more on an appearance fee instead, I really don't think he's worth going for. So I would say if you're after a free agent, Luke Cassie isn't your man. Let's move on to someone that isn't an injury-prone player though, Everton Cebolinha, a 27-year-old winger playing for Flamengo in Brazil that many people outside of Brazil might not be aware of, but as you can tell, he's a regular for the international team and he is considered a big part of the Brazil setup. He's valued at about 10 million, and to get a player of that quality at a prime age for that price, I think it looks like a really good deal at first, and there's many people out there who, if you send a scout to Brazil, they will come back glowing about this guy, saying that you should sign him. But of course, the reason he's in this video is there is an issue. It's not that he's injury prone, it's not that he's inconsistent, he's also not a nuisance in the dressing room. This guy has been a consistent performer in Brazil, then went to Portugal for a couple of years, and then came back to Brazil. Now that might give you a clue as to what his issue is, and it is because, like many Brazilians actually in the game, he has a very low rating for adaptability. There's another example at the same club in Gabriel Barbosa, Gabigol, who again looks like a great player. I mean, he looks amazing, but just doesn't quite work in game because of that adaptability. But we've spoken about him before, so let's focus on Everton today. What does adaptability affect? Why is it an issue? Well, it's probably one of the most workaroundable negative attributes that there is in the game, but still something you should take note of, particularly when you're spending a lot of money. What it means is when a player comes to a new nation that he's not familiar with, so either a nation different to where he is currently or different to his home nation, so in Everton's case, if he was going to a league that wasn't Portugal or Brazil, he's going to struggle to adapt, which means he won't play at his best ability. Now, with a player that struggles with adaptability, it doesn't rule them out totally. It might just mean that it might take 6 months or 12 months sometimes for a player to get up to full speed and play the way that you're expecting. And whilst that is okay for a young player, when you're spending 10 million on a player that you want to start, age 27, you don't want to be waiting a whole year for them to get good, really. And you've seen it many times in real life football where a club will sign someone like this, it doesn't work out, and they're ready to sell them by the next transfer window. And you might feel the same about Everton if you went to sign him. So whilst he is a Brazilian international available for 10 million that looks like a great deal, I would just consider that. Consider that he might struggle to adapt if you're not playing in Portugal or Brazil. And for that reason, you're probably best spending your money on someone else. So that's 5 players down, halfway through the video, 5 players that I think you should avoid in your save. But if you're after some players that you should sign, then why not check out my channel, linked in the description. It would mean a lot to me. I do YouTube shorts about Wonderkids that you should sign and bargain players that you should sign, but also we do every week a 40-minute or so rebuild where we take over a club, do 5 seasons, and try and take them to glory. From teams in the Premier League like Chelsea and Man City to teams all the way in the 5th tier of English football and across the world, across all of Europe. So if they sound interesting to you, I do think they're good content. I think you'll enjoy it. So come and check it out once this video's done, of course. But with that plugin done, let's go back to check out our final 5. And we've got a Wonderkid of FM years gone by who is still a very good option when you look at him on paper, but under the hood, I think there's a reason why you shouldn't go out and buy Armel Bella-Kotchap. The former Bochum centre-back looked good for Southampton when he was initially signed in the Premier League. When you start your saves in FM24 though, he'll be out on loan at PSV Eindhoven for the season. When he comes back from that loan, he's often available for a pretty good deal at Southampton, particularly for a young defender that's already a German international with a lot of potential. He can get way better than this and look like a really good centre-back. He's big at 6'3", he's strong with great jumping reach, good heading ability, the kind of defender that would work really well in this year's game. But there's an issue with him, as there is with every player in this video. Whilst you could get good results out of him, he's not going to be on the pitch all that often unless you really manage his injury rating, because he has an injury proneness of above 17 out of 20. So he's pretty much got as high as you can get for injury proneness. And while sometimes you can forgive it, like I say with that free agent earlier, you might be able to work around it a little bit, but you're going to struggle when you're spending 30, 25, 35 million pounds on a young defender. It's just not worth having the risk of him being constantly injured, particularly when he's at an age now at 21 where this is where he really needs to start to kick on and develop. If he joins you and suddenly gets injured, by that time he might be 23 when he comes back. He's already missed out on many of the crucial years in his development. He won't reach that potential. You spent a big chunk of money on him. He's not playing. It's just a recipe for disaster. And whilst he could be a good defender for you when he is fit, it's a big question of if he is fit, and for that reason, I'd spend your money on someone else. This player, though, is a little bit different to everybody else we've looked at. This is Riechedly Bazoer, a Dutch 26-year-old international at AZ Alkmaar, formerly of Vitesse, of Ajax, of Wolfsburg, and even Porto. And in this save, the 26-year-old heading into his prime is wanted by Al Nassr, and you might see why. He's got great attributes, he's super versatile, and available for a pretty cheap fee at AZ Alkmaar, with his contract starting to run low. So why wouldn't he be a good player for say, a low-level Premier League team, a mid-level Prem team, looking for a versatile option? Well, he is someone that I think is going to be a bad egg in your dressing room, or at least Football Manager thinks so, as he has a very high rating for controversy. Now, I don't know the story behind it with someone like Balotelli. I kind of know his career with Bazoer. I don't really know what he's done to deserve such a rating. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. But we looked at a ton of these players in my last Don't Sign video that we put out on Christmas Eve. We looked at these controversial bad eggs, and a lot of you guys said to us, I didn't realise. I signed that guy and he did end up causing a fuss. And someone like Bazoer here is going to be one of those. Now, thankfully, with only 3 for leadership, he's not exactly going to rise to be a leader in your dressing room. And that's a good thing, because these controversial players, they're the ones that are always asking you to have a chat, talking to the media when they're unhappy. And if they are a leader, they can really bring everyone else's mood down with them when they start to get annoyed at things. With Bazoer, that might not be the case, but him as a player, he's going to have a very high chance of kicking up a fuss. And whilst you might be able to keep him on his good side for a while, it won't be long before he has that tendency to cause an issue at the club. That's obviously going to make him unhappy. That could spread to other members of the squad. That brings your dynamics and your morale down. And if you don't know, in Football Manager, morale is so important, and having a low morale is going to completely affect the way your team plays. You can have the best tactics and the best players, but with low morale, they're not going to be playing anywhere near their best. So you don't want someone that's a bad egg and might cause that low morale. So for that reason, Riechedly Bazoer, leave him alone. Don't go and sign him. Back to our injury-prone lads, though. For our next player, we have John Souttar, a 26-year-old Scottish international at Rangers, available for about 6 million, with very, very good attributes, actually, in the Football Manager world to be a top defender. He's good with both feet as well, not bad with the passing ability either. You might look at this and think this is a perfect centre-back for, say, I don't know, if you're Ipswich getting promoted to the Premier League, let's say, would he not be a good option for 5 or 6 million? I would definitely say so, but then you realise there's a reason why he's in this video, and for John Souttar, it is the fact that he is very injury prone. As many players have been in this video, he has a very high rating of 18 out of 20 for injury proneness. So a lot of the time, this guy's going to be out injured, which I don't quite understand, because if you look at his history of his career, at Dundee United, he played regularly, at Hearts he played regularly, he had 2 seasons later on at Hearts where he struggled, but then got some good game time, and then at Rangers, played 12 times, maybe not the most in the world, but it doesn't look like he's been the most injury-prone player ever. Maybe you guys can let me know why he has such a high rating. Any Scottish football fans out there, please do tell me. But he does. He has a very high injury proneness. For that reason, he'll spend most of the time on the injury table, and he's not going to help your team survive in the Prem or whatever league you're playing in. So for that reason, let Rangers keep him. Look for someone else. But now we've only got 2 players left to go in this video, so if you are enjoying up to this point, it's the last time I'll ask you if you could smash that like button for us. And remember to let me know in the comments down below the players that you've struggled with when you've signed them in your save, who has never worked out for you. It's always really interesting to read your picks, so let me know down below. But let's move on to our final 2. And we've got 2 very different players to finish with, one for an elite team and one for those teams that might be looking for a bargain gem. Here is your elite option though, 26-year-old Canadian international at FC Porto, Steven Eustaquio, whose name I've definitely butchered there, but he is a defensive midfielder, a central midfielder, who I know personally, I've signed in a few rebuilds myself without knowing the reasons why I shouldn't sign him. Valued at about 20 million, that's not bad at all for a player heading into his prime that's already got big club experience here, particularly when you see he can play 2 positions, a variety of roles, and his attributes are super well rounded. A set piece taker who's good defensively, good with the pass, good when it comes to goal scoring. You can't really ask for too much more. Works hard, good mentally, a leader with an unflappable, media-friendly spirit, and an intelligent player style and a spirited personality. Looks like a great option. Of course he does, but why shouldn't you sign him? Well, he is one, like the Brazilians we've looked at earlier, who struggles to adapt to new countries. He only has a 5 for adaptability, which again, you might be able to bypass. It's only going to take a bit of time, and he will be playing back at a top level in 6 to 12 months or so when he comes to a new area. But you are running that risk that he isn't going to play at a high level. And particularly when you look at the kind of player he is, he's at Porto. He's only going to be joining, I imagine, either high-level Premier League teams or other Champions League sides. So you're all teams that will want to be performing straight away. You don't want to spend 20 million on a midfielder in the prime of his career just for him to waste that first year, get into a decent level. And for that reason, I suggest you stay away from him. Now, he has only really played in Portugal in his career, went to Mexico, played once, then didn't play the next season, got loaned back to Portugal, and never really played again in Mexico, so maybe that is the reason why his adaptability is so low. But Porto seem to have got him on a bargain deal. He's been good for them, but outside of Portugal, he does tend to struggle. So for that reason, I would probably say to look for someone else. But my final pick is a little hidden gem that you can find at Anderlecht, a 22-year-old valued at about 6 million in the Belgian leagues, an Argentinian by the name of Luis Vazquez. Now you look at him and you go, brilliant, a perfect physical profile, the kind of striker that works well in FM this year. He's quick, he's good in the air, he's strong, he's tall, he is going to score a ton of goals. And out of everyone in this video, he's probably the one that I would say, you know what, he will be good for you if you play him. If you bring him in, he is going to score goals, that's for sure, but he's probably only going to score goals against the weaker teams because Luis Vazquez has a fairly low rating for consistency at 9 out of 20, which you can maybe ignore, but his important matches rating is nearly the lowest of anybody in all of Football Manager. Again, I don't know what he's done to earn it, but I checked another save and he did have a similar level. He's only got 2 out of 20 for important matches, so when it comes to these big games, when it comes to the important moments, that's when he's going to disappear, and you don't want that from a striker, particularly one that is probably going to be your starter with the attributes he has. To have him go missing on those big days is not what you want, particularly from a striker who's meant to be leading the line and bagging you a load of goals. So he's a hard worker, he's a good option, you might get good results, but I would say if you've got the money, look for someone else. There's better options out there for that kind of price. And that concludes the 10 players that I think you should avoid in Football Manager. Remember to let me know down below the players that you would have put in this list, the ones that you've had bad experiences with. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.